Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Sciascia. I'm a senior researcher here at the Centre for Learning and Teaching at AUT University.
And I'm Claudio Aguayo. I'm a research assistant here at the Centre for Learning and Teaching. And we are very excited to present this new and unique framework on mobile learning and Maori pedagogies, part of the Aotearoa MPF 14 LMD project.
He Whare Ako, he Whare Hangarau framework weaves Kaupapa Māori theories, values and approaches to teaching and learning. This is Ako. It provides distinct mobile learning parallels of theory and practice conceptualised into the visual of a metaphorical wharenui, or traditional meeting house. The framework depicts the relationship between Ako and mobile learning. It encourages and engages a range of pedagogies that are culturally responsive and that are open to the affordances of technologies. The framework is a values-based approach to understanding the role of mobile devices in the learning context. The wharenui structure has been chosen to conceptualise concepts of Ako and mobile learning theories into the framework. Before we actually get into the framework though, it's really important to understand firstly what the wharenui is, its purpose and function. The wharenui is a key gathering place for many Māori communities, whānau, hapu and iwi, and it is one of the few remaining spaces where Māori have autonomy over their tikanga or their protocols. It's the main place where tikanga Māori remain alive, including practices of rituals of encounter and ceremonies, but also customs are carried out here. The wharenui itself is symbolic of the body of a prominent ancestor. The head of the ancestor is depicted at the apex in a carved figurehead. The rafters in the porchway represent the outstretched arms. The rafters inside the wharenui are the ribs, the walls are the legs, the roof is the spine, and so on. The wharenui is a space of peace and is also a place for enlightenment, understanding and knowledge. The wharenui is presided over by the Atua or God, Rongo Marairua, who is known as the God of Peace. The marae atea is the courtyard in front of the wharenui, and its function is to allow for rituals of encounter to play out here, including the pohiri process, which is the formal welcoming of any visitor onto any marae. Before any visitor can step foot onto the marae, they must first be formally welcomed through a series of protocols. These protocols include a formal calling of invitation from the home people to enter. These calls are followed by an exchange of speeches, and it is here where the host people and visitors establish common ground and understanding of each other. This understanding is affirmed through the formal greeting of the hongi or pressing noses. The marae atea is therefore the first point of contact and is a space where issues are debated and worked through before entering the wharenui. Within the context of our framework here, the marae atea is a space where common ground between teacher and learner can be made and connections are established.
In terms of the mobile learning parallel, this is the instance where a common ground should be achieved between learners through debate and common agreement regarding a potential range of mobile learning issues. For example, suitable learning theories, specific learning needs to be addressed, or best mobile learning approach and usage.
So after we've been welcomed onto the marae, it's then appropriate to go into the wharenui. So once that common ground has been met and understood, visitors then enter. And within the context of the framework, the teacher and learner enter this house of learning as whānau, or as equals. Shoes are also left at the door, which means any take or issues that would affect the learning environment or the learning process are asked to be left at the door.
In terms of mobile learning parallel, the house of learning is the setting or context where the learning process and practice using mobile devices can take place between learning actors, both students and teachers, seen as co-learners, within a frame of common understanding and agreement.
So this is our house of learning, and what's important in any house is a solid foundation. So the foundation of the house or the floor is an important part of the wharenui. A quality house can only be built upon a solid foundation. Therefore, the floor of the wharenui represents Kaupapa Māori theory, practice and values. Key values such as whanaungatanga, relationships, kotahitanga, unity, and manaakitanga, hospitality, underpin the foundation of this house as being important building blocks for effective teaching practice.
The mobile learning application, or parallel in this case, is that mobile learning should embrace culturally responsive principles, values and practices, depending on local cultural context. In this case, this refers to Kaupapa Māori theory, practice and values.
So moving upwards from the floor, we then go to the pāpaka or the weave-based trim around the wharenui. The base trim around the wharenui is another layer upon the foundation of values, but it represents the additional theories and frameworks that are important to learning.
In terms of teaching and learning, the base trim of the house represents the philosophical foundations of learning theories and frameworks, which constitute the theoretical basis of mobile learning theory, research and practice.
We then move to the popo, or the interior carved posts. Within any wharenui, there are distinctly different popo that line the walls. Each popo represents a prominent ancestor and his or her feats that have been achieved over time for their people. The popo in this framework represents the multiple pedagogies and approaches to teaching and learning that are culturally responsive. These might include valuing identity and cultural knowledge, ensuring whānau hapu and iwi engagement during the learner's journey, and drawing on and valuing metaphors, narratives and storytelling in teaching and learning.
In terms of mobile learning, each inside column of the house represents a learning theory or mobile learning theory, as well as pedagogical approaches on which the whole house of learning is built and supported. Specific learning theories or pedagogical approaches inform specific learning processes. These columns also represent existing literature and reports on mobile learning or specific pedagogies such as bring your own device.
Tukutuku panels in the wharenui tell of the great stories and narratives important to that marae. Within the context of the framework, the tukutuku panels represents the space where meaning and understanding is made by the learner, and also where knowledge is co-created and retold through the learner's perspective. These storyboards allow for learners to make meaning and express meaning as they draw on their own culture, values, identity and so on.
Tukutuku panels represent the potential learning process that can be achieved by learners using mobile devices, drawn from the philosophical frameworks, learning theories, and the mobile devices and affordances. Examples of this are the range of practice that practitioners are currently doing using mobile devices. Although learning here is seen as a co-created process, at the individual level, tukutuku panels also represent the personal learning experience on individuals.
Within the wharenui context, we then arrive to the rafters or the heke. There's a range of different symbolisms that the heke represents, but one of these talks about the god Tāne and his ascent to the 12 heavens in search of 3 baskets of knowledge and enlightenment. The scaffolded levels that you see, they represent the journey of pursuing knowledge and understanding. In this way, the framework conceptualizes the heke as the many pathways to accessing knowledge and sharing knowledge.
In terms of mobile learning parallel, the heke rafter represents the various mobile devices, technologies, and affordances that support mobile learning processes. Examples of such affordances are mobile social media, multimedia production, geolocation, and online communities of practice. The heke rafters also represent the access to knowledge that is shared in what we have called the cloud.
We then arrive to the roof or the top part or the ridge pole of the wharenui. So the tāhuhu, this represents ranginui, Sky Father, but it also represents this concept called Te Ira Atua, the spiritual or the higher realm where we consider where knowledge resides. So within the context of the framework, the tāhuhu is a significant part as it is where knowledge exists, is stored, accessed, shared, exchanged and nurtured within. This space is full of unbounded potential.
In terms of mobile learning, the cloud is the non-physical realm where unbounded potential for learning resides. The cloud is full of knowledge and learning potential that can be accessed through mobile devices and affordances, supported and accessible through the intrinsic learning potential of individuals.
So firstly, there are 3 main pillars to any wharenui. There's also one in the porch. Together, these 3 posts or pillars represent the symbolical separation of ranginui or Sky Father and Papatuanuku, Earth Mother, so that te ao marama or the world of light and knowledge could flood through and be experienced by their children. Within the framework, we talk specifically about te pou toko manawa. It is the most important pole or pillar of the wharenui and it's considered the heart of the house. This pole directly connects te ira tangata or the physical realm with te ira atua, the spiritual realm. So within the context of our framework here, te pou toko manawa, the most important pole, it represents the direct connection between the physical wānanga space and the virtual wānanga space.
In mobile learning, This center post represents the intrinsic potential of individuals to learn. This learning process comes from the very heart of individuals. This main post is also a direct connection to the cloud, where the learner may directly connect with knowledge and understanding without assistance of technological devices, which represents the offline or face-to-face component of mobile learning.
So we then move to the back of the wharenui, which we call tuarongo, the interior back wall of the wharenui. So this wall acts as a connection between tira atua and tira tangata, but it's also a wall that acknowledges whakapapa links or genealogical connections. Many marae use this wall to remember those who have passed. So within the context of our framework, te tuarongo represents and acknowledges traditional teaching and learning theories and frameworks that have contributed and been built and developed over time to contribute to current practice.
In mobile learning, this back wall represents the acknowledgement of previous and older learning theories and technologies that have contributed to current practice and have developed to newer theories and technologies.
And lastly, we move to the actual physical space or the room of the wharenui. This space is where the learning process and practice takes place. It's interactive, engaging, and it's in a supportive environment, underpinned with values and supported by pedagogical practice.
The interior space of the learning house, where all conditions are provided for the co-creation of learning to best occur using mobile devices, theories, technologies, and affordances. As discussed earlier, the door of the learning house is always open and ready for learners. Similarly, mobile devices and the cloud are always accessible for the learning process. Issues that can affect such learning process should be left outside the learning house until they are resolved through common understanding and agreement. As a summary, from a mobile learning perspective, the house of learning represents the learning context where the learning can occur using mobile devices. As a guide to practitioners, effective mobile learning firstly involves caring for learners within a frame of common agreement, understanding, and respect, founded on culturally responsive principles and values. This involves the acknowledgement of the unique background all learners bring to the learning process, as well as the practice of existing social, cultural, educational, and technological protocols. Once in the space of common agreement, from a practitioner's point of view, engaging with learners in a learning process using mobile devices involves three distinct dimensions: the philosophical dimension, the pedagogical dimension, and the technological dimension. Consideration of these mobile learning issues from the house of learning can effectively enhance the learning process for learners using mobile devices. Practitioners are encouraged to consider and adopt particular mobile learning strategies, following the framework in consideration of their social, cultural, educational, and technological context in order to provide the best learning experience to all learners.